Hello everybody, this is TipTop MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at Amonkhet Remastered and the cards that didn't quite make the cut. So, Amonkhet Remastered is the combination of Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation into one set. And it also adds a few cards from outside that block. And so what I've done is I've gone over all the cards during spoiler season. You guys can check that out. I did a video where I talked about the cards that aren't from Amonkhet or Hour of Devastation. And in today's video, we are going to be looking at the cards that were in either Hour of Devastation or Amonkhet that got cut. And so what I've done here is actually using Scryfall. They have some amazing filters, so I was able to filter it out so we can take a look at what cards were not cut, and I can talk about maybe why they weren't cut, my thoughts on them not being in the set, and then we're going to go over specifically the rares and the mythics. So, why don't we get into this? So, here are our first set of 4 cards. So, something like a Cursed Horde, Active Heroism, an Ambuscade. I'm not super, surprised that they weren't included. Things like a Cursed Horde and Active Heroism really aren't going to be meta defining, and yes, one of them brings more zombie tribal, but we already have enough of that. Active Heroism, it's just another white, ambush spell, and Ambuscade is, again, just another ambush spell. It is a little bit of a fight spell, and that may have been interesting in Historic, but generally the commons and uncommons aren't that interesting. But Adorned Pouncer, with Core Set 2021 having such a big theme of cats, I was actually very surprised that not only Adorned Pouncer, but a couple other cats were cut from Amonkhet Remastered. You'd think, oh, let's put in some good cat cards so that maybe we boost sales of Core Set 2021, because people now want to go get stuff like that. So it is a little bit surprising, although it makes sense from maybe a balance reason or maybe even a gameplay reason. This card, the two cost 1/1 with double strike, is kind of insane. There are lots of cat tribal boost, and just it would have been slightly dangerous. So I do see why it's not here. Now, it also could have been for many reasons. It could have been because of the limited environment. I don't think it would have broken the game. I think it just may have actually pushed like a cat tribal deck into maybe the meta. And obviously it's not just this card. It is one other card that causes me to say that. But next, let's move on to the next set of 4. So next we have Amonkhet Eternal, Angel of Condemnation, and Angel of the God Pharaoh, and Angler Drake. So we have 2 rares, 2 uncommons. So we also have our first card from Amonkhet. So Amonkhet Eternal gives you more support from -1/-1 counters. It adds more Afflict. I actually don't know why this one wasn't included. Maybe besides the fact that it wasn't great in draft because of a 5/5 for 3, that could be kind of devastating in a draft. It also could have been that the rare was like worthless in a draft. I really don't know. But I assume if you played this later in the game when your opponent didn't have many cards, it would be pretty good. We have Angel of Condemnation. 4-cost white creature angel, 3/3 with flying and vigilance. You can pay to exile another target creature and return it at the end step, or you can exert it and exile it until Angel of Condemnation leaves the battlefield. I think that's a really interesting card, but it does feel somewhat out of place in the set. Yes, it has exert, but if we're looking at it from a limited perspective, it does feel somewhat out of place. Angel of the God Pharaoh. This is just very generic and very boring. I see why they cut it. Obviously, it could easily have been in the set, but it also could easily have been left out. Angler Drake, 6-cost blue creature Drake, 4/4 flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature to its owner's hand. We have better cards than this in Historic. Again, boring, very similar to Angel of the God Pharaoh. Could have been left in, could have been left out. So it makes sense that it was one of the ones left out. Next, we have Apocalypse Demon, Aven Reedstalker, and Bane Whip Punisher, as well as Benefaction of Ronus. 3 of these are commons and uncommons. I mean, a 2/3 with flash and flying for 4. Very generic, very boring, doesn't need to be in here. But what I like to look at is the rares. Apocalypse Demon, 6-cost black creature demon, star with flying, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. At the beginning of your upkeep, tap it unless you sacrifice another creature. So just another one of those maybe big threats coming out. The graveyard strategies are pretty big in Historic. I don't know, honestly, looking at the set, I don't know what they were looking at. Were they looking at Historic balance? Were they looking at just the limited environment? I'm not sure. But if they were looking at a balance perspective, I don't think this is broken. I just think that it's not great in limited. And then obviously the other things, I think Banewhip Punisher is kind of disappointing. I think that, ETB, -1/-1 counter, then sack and destroy. I feel like that's a perfectly fine thing for limited, and I think it would have been interesting in a -1/-1 counter based deck, but obviously some things need to be cut. Now, you'll notice that we've looked at 12 cards so far, and we are going to start speeding through this a little bit faster. But there's only been 2 cards so far from Amonkhet, so it looks like Hour of Devastation got cut the most, although that could end up changing. Benefaction of Veronis, just be very similar effects. Commons, you don't really need to speculate too much. A lot of them are just not played, and that's why they didn't need to be reprinted. Now here we have a set of commons and uncommons. Now, this is kind of the inversion. We have 3 Amonkhet cards, one Hour of Devastation card. Now, when it comes to Blood Raid Brawler, this was already in Jumpstart, so that makes sense why it's not here. Blazing Volley is also already in the game. Bitterblade Warrior, just very generic exert. There are plenty of generic exerts in the exert creatures in the set, so they don't really need to add another one. Then Bloodwing Water Entity, I think could be a balance thing, but probably not. This is just very similar to a lot of cards we already have. There's a 5-cost version in mono blue that kind of does the same thing, except it just goes right into your hand and it is bigger, but it doesn't have flying. So we have very similar things already in the game. A lot of these cards that were cut, like this one for instance, may have been cut because, that theme was too strong in draft compared to the others. Next we have some interesting ones. So Bounty of the Luxa, cancel, Carrion Screecher, and Chandler Initiate. Now, I'm going to kind of ignore cancel and Carrion Screecher, both of which are just generic cards. One of them's already in the set. But Bounty of Luxa, that's an interesting one. I think that it has some potential, but part of it could be even that it's not a confusing card, but it's one you have to read a couple times to fully see what it does. And then Chandler Initiate is kind of weird. It definitely feels historic-y in its, power level, in the fact that, hey, there's some proliferate going around a little bit, so it's kind of risky to play it, and it gets bigger over time. I just like Chandler Initiate, so it's kind of weird to see it not here. But again, they could have just looked at, what colors need to be cut, and this card isn't really contributing to the limited environment that much. Next, we have Chaos Maw, Cinder Barons, Colossopede, Consuming Fervor. So, Chaos Maw, just really big, dumb, rare that probably isn't great to draft. Colossopede, very just big, generic creature. And Consuming Fervor, that's actually kind of interesting for a limited perspective, but it is another one of those just generic spells. And then Cinder Barons is already in the game. Next, we have Cradle of the Accursed, Crook of Condemnation, Cunning Savior, and Cursed Minotaur. Now, the only one of these I've ever heard of was Crook of Condemnation, and I think part of its, removal is that we have Soul Guide Lantern, which, you can, when it enters the battlefield, you exile a card. Then you can sack it to exile all cards, or pay 1 and sack to draw a card. This has a similar effect. It doesn't exile something on ETB, and you can repeatedly exile singular cards, but I think it's just too similar and isn't unnecessary because of it. We have Cradle of the Accursed, just, I don't know, just more desert support. It's just generic. You'll notice a lot of the comments, I really don't have that much to say. Cursed Minotaur, just a generic creature. Cunning Survivor, just, more support for cycle discard. They probably would have had to cut some things, obviously, that in each theme, so just it gets cut. Next up, we have Dagger of the Worthy, Decimator Beetle, Decision Paralysis, and Defiant Kenra. Out of these, the only one that really sparks to my mind is, kind of interesting, is Decimator Beetle. It's 3 black-green for a creature insect, 4/5, and when it ETBs, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature you control. And when it attacks, remove a -1/-1 counter from a target creature you control, and put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature defending player control. So it turns -1/-1 counters on your stuff into stuff on your opponents, and that may be kind of, not vague, but very narrow in its uses. It's just, I thought it was an interesting card. The rest of these are just very, a 2/2 for 2. Wow. A blue spell that taps things. Wow. Dagger of the Worthy is interesting, giving Afflict, but I'm not super worried about any of these cards, and I don't think anyone was upset that any of these weren't included. Next, we have Devoted Cropmate, Devotee of Strength, Derju's Reunification, Reunification, Dejru with Eyes Open. Now, out of these, I think Devoted Cropmate could have been an interesting card within Historic, but the only other one here that I think could be interesting is Dejru with Eyes Open. First off, it has the potential to be a commander for Historic Brawl, but its ability is a Planeswalker tutor. And it protects your planeswalkers. And we really don't have anything like Dejru. Yes, we have like one planeswalker tutor, and we have one tutor that can like tutor anything. But I think that this is an interesting card that would have been an interesting inclusion, and I probably would have included it over other things, like maybe Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace, we already have a similar effect. So obviously Rest in Peace is one of the ones they added from outside of Amonkhet, but I just feel that it's a little weird. Next we have Dream Stealer, Dune Diviner, Dunes of the Dead, Dutiful Servants. Okay, Dream Stealer I've heard of. It is, generally I based how popular card is on whether I've heard of it or remember it. Dream Stealer, 1/2 with Menace, and when it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards that many cards. That's kind of crazy if you can boost it up. It's hard to block. It's just a good value card. Dune Diviner is just more desert support. It seems like they cut a lot of desert stuff. Similarly, Dunes of the Dead was cut. And then Dutiful Servants, again, just a generic creature. Next, we have Electrify, Embalmer's Tools, Horn Minotaur, and Endless Sands. So, starting from the right, Endless Sands, they're cutting more deserts. I think that's been very apparent. Activated abilities of Embalmer's Tools is kind of an interesting card, but I think that I actually think it could be a little too powerful. I don't know. I think it just has some implications with, like, maybe escape here that you don't really want. Is that an activate? That's not an activated ability, though. So I don't know exactly why this was, not included. It could have been as simple as we need to cut a card. What is going to be the least interesting in Historic? And that totally could have been the case. Or which is going to affect limited the least. Next we have Forsaken Sanctuary, Fling, Flameblade Adept, and Faith of the Devoted. So Fling and Forsaken Sanctuary really are already in the game. Flameblade Adept is just another generic red creature that gets bigger, and Faith of the Devoted. Flameblade Adept was the big creature, or the creature that gets bigger. Faith of the Devoted is another payoff for cycling and stuff, but it's just a direct way to turn cycling into winning. I actually think there's enough of those in Historic already, so I think that could have actually been a legitimate motivation. We have Foul Orchard, Fraying Sanity, Frilled Sandwalla, and Frontline Devastator. Now, the only one I'm really going to talk about here is Fraying Sanity. I think that this was included because it would have made mill decks way too strong. It'll be interesting to see how curses work and look on MTG Arena now, but I think that this one is a little bit insane, so it's good to see that they are not including it. With cards like Bruvac and even maybe Persistent Petitioners, this could have been a devastating deck, and I'm glad it's not, because they didn't include this card. Next we have Gale Strike, Giant Spider, Gideon's Defeat, and Gift of Paradise. Now, what I find weird, and what I would like to talk about, if it would show the cards, is the defeat cycle. 2 of the defeats, I believe, maybe 3, but 2 of the defeats at least are within the set, but not the other ones. And I think that's mostly due to just in the meta what makes the most sense right now. I mean, the blue one that counters blue spells, yeah, that's definitely going in a lot of things because, I mean, maybe not. Mystical Dispute is very similar, but I don't know. It's just overall, I think that the defeat cycle is kind of unfortunate. I don't like the defeat cycle. Having cards in your deck that could just be duds. Obviously, you don't include them in your deck. You put them in your sideboard. But in a best of one, based format like MTG Arena and Historic, I think it makes sense to only include a couple of defeats. And then Gale Strike, Giant Spider, and Gift of Paradise. Gift of Paradise is already in here. Giant Spider is too. So yeah, makes sense. Next, we have Gift of Strength, Glyph Keeper, God Pharaoh's Faithful, and Granitic Titan. The only one here that I'm kind of surprised about is Glyph Keeper. It would have been nice to see another version of another embalmed creature that kind of protects itself. I don't see I think it could have been the fact that it itself doesn't open up enough possibilities in Historic, so it was one of the first ones cut. I mean, yes, it's a creature that defends itself, so maybe you throw this in like an aura deck, but I just think that it wouldn't see any play in Historic, so why reprint it? So next we are going to talk about, some more cards. These ones we're going to go through a little bit faster. I'm pretty much not going to talk about them unless they are rares, just because, well, you can kind of guess. They had to cut a bunch of commons. They just cut the ones that they thought were going to be the least impactful, or would impact impact the limited environment the least. Now here I do want to talk about Harvest Season. I think this is a really interesting card. It will not be meta defining, but I think there are a lot of cool decks that can use it. Just spit out a bunch of creatures, tap them either for mana or just swing with them, whatever, and then you just get to ramp a whole bunch. I love Harvest Season. Hazoret's Favor, it allows you to boost things, give things haste, but then they're also going to be like sacrifice, so I think that one is just very narrow and probably wouldn't see any play, so why reprint it? By the way, when I say I'm looking forward to, obviously Hazoret's Harvest Season is not coming to the game. I meant that if it was, I would be looking forward to it. Sorry. I just overall, I'm kind of disappointed Harvest Season isn't coming to the game. Next we have Hazoret's Undying Fury, Heart Piercer Manticore, Highland Lake, Honed Kospesh. Heart Piercer Manticore, it's an interesting card that allows you to kind of throw your creatures at your opponent, but I don't really see how that would be super useful in a Historic at the moment, and it doesn't seem like a very powerful card, so it makes sense that it's not included. Next, we have Honored Hydra, Hostile Desert, Hour of Eternity, and Hour of Glory. So here we have 4 rares. Now, Honored Hydra, just very generic, very boring. Hostile Desert, they really are kind of cutting out a lot of deserts in this. Hour of Eternity, I think that it just doesn't feel very blue. And I think that I just don't like the card personally, so I'm kind of glad it's not being included. And Hour of Glory, I don't exactly understand. Maybe there's too many gods right now in Historic, or maybe it's just there's not enough gods. That just Ravnica had gods, had the Amonkhet gods. The Amonkhet Remastered has gods. Theros has gods. So and some of them don't have indestructible. But oh wait, that doesn't matter for this one. I don't know. I just think that the cards are somewhat narrow in their uses, and Hour of Eternity is just kind of annoying. So now we're going to just kind of scroll through, and I'm going to stop once we see some that I like. Hyena Pack, Illusionary Wrappings, Imaginary Threat, Inferno Jet, Jace's Defeat, which is one that I thought they could have included, but is very similar to Mystical Dispute, Kefnet's Last Words. That is an interesting card that is very similar to something it's kind of weird how they're breaking up cycles. And it's very clear to see that they're not taking this from a set design perspective. They're taking it from a gameplay perspective, which I think is honestly a really good sign. So, yeah, like, for instance, I believe... Ketra's Last Words? No, I don't remember. One of the last words, or like in that kind of vein, is there. Limits of Solidarity, Lurching Rot Beast, Luxa River Shrine, Manalith. Manalith is very boring, obviously. Luxa River Shrine isn't going to see any play. Mending River is obviously already here. A lot of these are just very, very generic and boring, so it makes sense that they are not including them. Wouldn't you rather have something that's more interesting? For instance, Nissa's Defeat. I think Nissa's Defeat was included because that would be a sideboard card. You can destroy target forest, green enchantment, or green planeswalker. There's a lot of those. If Wilderness Reclamation was still in standard, this would be a number one, like an amazing sideboard card. Kill Wilderness Reclamation. Kill Nissa. Kill a forest that Nissa turned into a land. So many awesome things you can do with this. We have Oketra's Last Mercy. So you'll notice here that they did not include Oketra's Last Mercy, but they included Bantu's Last Mercy? Not Last Mercy, I don't remember what it's called, but Oracle's Vault and Overcome, both just kind of boring cards that don't add to Historic, and don't really add to Limited either. You have to look at rares and realize that rares really don't define Limited formats. But the thing is, you don't want a bunch of dud rares, because then you're just naturally at a disadvantage. So I feel like they're doing a good job here. It's kind of unfortunate. Plague Bearer allows you to... it is the whole -1/-1 counter on your stuff, but it also has Zombie Tribal, so that's pretty awesome. yeah, just there are some awesome cards in here that I am kind of upset about. I think that Random Map Hydra is kind of interesting. Fortunately, I'm not going to get to play with it, but I think that generally they did pretty well. Now, there is one card here that I want to talk about. Regal Carousel. Carousel? I think that this would have been an amazing card if it was printed, and I think that part of why it wasn't, I think cats would have been dominant. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but we have Kahira. We have the one cat from M21 that destroys artifacts and boosts all cats. We have Regal Carousel, which would now be another cat booster. And I just think that's a little bit too much right now, so I'm kind of glad they didn't include it. The only thing is, when they choose to not reprint powerful cards, their statement of we're doing Pioneer Master, or we are doing remastered sets in order to catch up to Pioneer, kind of goes out the window then. It's like, well, you're trying to still make Historic this wonderful format, but you also need it to be Pioneer. So we're starting to run into a little bit of that problem here, but overall not awful. I think it's probably best that they didn't include it, but it does cause some questions for the future. Just more like Ronus's Last Stand was also not included. Just overall, I think on most of the choices I agree with. There are a few that I think shouldn't have been excluded, but that's just my opinion. If you would have said, oh yeah, we can include it, but we have to get rid of X, Y, or Z, maybe I would have changed my mind. I don't know exactly why they cut each one of these cards, but I thought it was interesting. Now, one card I am awesomely, I am very disappointed in the fact that it's not going to be here. Swarm Intelligence. Now we have Double Vision right now, which does the same effect but for cheaper in red, but it's only the first spell each turn. And so obviously that's probably why they didn't include it, because, well, we have a similar effect, but I just wanted more of it for my whole use Mythos of Aluna to copy that Double Vision, so then you get tons of Double Visions, and then you copy a bunch of stuff. But with Swarm Intelligence, you can copy everything you cast, and that just sounds awesome. But yeah, it does make sense. It is a very big, janky enchantment that does nothing when it enters the battlefield. Just looking through, you'll notice that there's not many cards that go, ooh, that's, interesting. Now, I want to talk about Uncage the Menagerie. This is the only mythic from our Devastation and Amonkhet that is not included. Now, I don't know why. Maybe it's that they figure, oh, we have enough tutor spells, oh, we have better spells, maybe, oh, why would you cast this when you have Finale of Devastation in the game? I don't know, maybe they just didn't think it worked well, and it wasn't worth being a mythic, and it didn't see any play. If that's the case, okay, that's fair. It just seems weird to have all the mythics except this one. I think it would have been better just to keep that and just be like, yeah, when we remaster sets, we're keeping the mythics. So, yeah. And even think about it, they went out of their way to go make mythics from other sets, so they really didn't want this card in there. Things like Unsummon are already in Historic, so why add them to the set again, or into a set again? Wildfire Eternal just doesn't see much play, and that's generally it. So those are all of the cards. Now, really quickly, I am going to go through every single rare. Now, I'm not going to talk about them, but while I talk, you will be able to see every single rare that they excluded, and that's actually a decent amount of them. Now, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that these cards, which of these cards are you sad is not coming to Arena with Amonkhet Remastered? Honestly, some of them were really surprising to me. Now, I think they probably did it for the best. They probably tested it with and without a lot of these cards to see which of the limited environments felt the best. And I think it'll end up working out to be better in the end, but that's just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Tomorrow I'm doing a video where I talk about what cards I think are going to be the most impactful within Historic from Amonkhet Remastered. And yeah, again, if you like the video, hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.